This is a true story, but the names of the characters have been changed. I'm Dan, 24 years old, living and working in San Francisco. My life here moves fast and is filled with the energy of the Bay Area tech world, where my fintech startup job keeps me on my toes. Growing up in the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon, San Francisco was a whole new world when I first moved here. It's a modern, vibrant city but still has these oddly peaceful corners. I've come to love it. My workdays are often packed with deadlines, meetings, and projects, and though it can get overwhelming, things always feel lighter with Kate by my side. Kate is my girlfriend, but more than that, she's my best friend. We're both 24, and we've been together since we were 16, when we were high school seniors. Our story started in Portland, where every Saturday, we'd ride bikes around the city, watch movies at a small theater near our school, and spend nights on Kate's rooftop, talking about our dreams. Sometimes, we'd just sit in silence, and yet I always felt at peace with her there beside me. When we graduated, things weren't easy. I went to UC Berkeley in California to study computer science, while Kate went to Washington State University for communications. Long distance was hard. We had our share of late-night arguments and missed holidays, and it took every ounce of patience to keep us going. But we made it. After 3 years, I graduated, got a job offer in San Francisco, and Kate soon found a job here, too, as an office assistant at a big event planning firm in the city center. We started thinking about a future here, imagining what we'd do together now that the distance was behind us. Kate and I have a tight-knit friend group from high school, and we've kept that connection alive. Matt, my best friend, has been there since day one, always rooting for me and Kate. He joked that the first time he saw us together, he knew we were meant to be. Kate's best friend, Chloe, has been an essential part of our little group too. Most weekends, we plan short trips, pack up the car, and escape the city. We've had countless camping trips at places like Yosemite and Lake Tahoe, where we share stories around the campfire and forget the stress of our daily routines. I remember one night camping in Yosemite, a sudden rainstorm hit just as we were settling down. We scrambled to pack up, but our tent had a tear, so everything was soaked. We were all cold and tired, but Kate just sat there, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. At that moment, I knew I'd found someone who could face anything with me, someone who could make even the worst situations bearable. That trip made me realize how lucky I was to have her by my side. The job I took on in San Francisco keeps me busy, sometimes more than I'd like, but Kate has always been my anchor. When I have to work through the night to meet deadlines, she'll leave a sweet text in the morning or drop off a coffee at my door if she's up early. Once, when I was overwhelmed by a big project, I vented to her for hours about all the technical problems we were facing. Kate doesn't know much about tech, but she listened, made me laugh, and somehow, I felt lighter. She's the only person I feel I can share everything with, the good and the bad. Living in San Francisco is a busy life, filled with the constant hum of the city, the rhythm of work deadlines, and the pulse of people always on the move. But despite all that hustle, I treasure the time we spend together, carving out little pockets of peace in this vibrant city. Some Sundays, we'll stroll along the Embarcadero, taking in the salty air and watching the ferries glide across the bay. We'll pause to look out at the Golden Gate Bridge, its iconic red-orange span standing tall against the sky, and in those moments, everything else seems to fade away. Afterward, we might wander down a quiet alley in North Beach, where we'll stumble upon a hidden coffee shop we've never tried before. We'll sip lattes and people watch, talking about anything and everything, or sometimes just enjoying the comfortable silence that only comes with knowing each other so well. Sometimes, we'll pick a cozy little restaurant for lunch, maybe a tiny bistro with a view of the bustling city streets, or a spot with tables tucked under leafy trees where the afternoon sunlight filters through, casting a warm glow. Those simple days are my favorite. They're a gentle reminder that, after everything, we're still here for each other. These moments make me feel grateful for the small joys we get to share, like laughing over a shared dessert or exchanging glances as we watch the world go by. It's in these quiet, ordinary experiences that we create memories together, memories that feel like the heartbeat of our relationship amidst the rush of city life. Our relationship hasn't always been smooth, especially when we started college and ended up studying in two different states. I got into UC Berkeley in California to study computer science, while Kate chose Washington State University for her communications degree. Those first days apart were incredibly tough on both of us. Adjusting to new school environments, intense class schedules, and the physical distance made us feel separated not just by miles but emotionally as well. There were nights when we'd talk on the phone, and I could hear the exhaustion and longing in Kate's voice, and I felt it too. But we'd always try to reassure each other, saying that we just had to hold on a little longer and that we'd get through it together. Sometimes, the smallest misunderstandings would turn into arguments because of the distance. Simple things, like why one of us didn't respond right away or if one of us went out with friends without mentioning it first, often blew up. Each time this happened, I feared that our love might slowly fade away. But somehow, we'd always find a way to make up and remind ourselves of everything we'd been through to get here. For me, every time we overcame an argument, we grew a little closer, and our relationship felt stronger. We made an effort to create special occasions to see each other. During winter breaks, I'd drive all night from California to Washington just to spend a few days together. Those days became some of our most cherished memories, walking through the snow, sitting in small cafes, and savoring each moment as if it was a luxury. Every time we said goodbye and returned to our schools, I felt the heaviness in my chest, and I knew Kate felt the same. But we kept telling each other that this separation was temporary and that one day we'd be in the same city, no distance between us. During that time, Kate was my biggest motivation to keep going. Once, I was overwhelmed by finals and nearly ready to give up. Even though she was busy with her own exams, she spent hours on the phone encouraging me, reminding me of my goals and why I had chosen this path. She'd always say that no matter how hard it got, we'd face it together and make our dreams a reality. Her patience and support got me through some of the hardest moments of my college life. After 3 long years of distance, I graduated and landed a job in San Francisco. When she found out, Kate made the decision to move to the city so we could finally be together without the constant separation. For the first time, we started making long-term plans, imagining the life we'd build together. It was in that moment I realized that everything we had been through, the struggles, the distance, and the happiness, had only made our love stronger. San Francisco became the place where we put all our hopes, ready to start fresh after those years of separation. October arrived, and with it came a deep, unsettling sense of unease that I couldn't ignore. Kate had changed, in ways that were subtle but undeniable, and it was becoming impossible to brush off. In the past, we had always been close, messaging each other every night before bed. We'd talk about everything, stories from work, little jokes from the day, plans for the weekend. Those late-night conversations had been a ritual, a comforting way to end the day. But lately, her responses had dwindled, and when she did reply, her messages were short and distant, almost formal, as if I were just another acquaintance and not the person she'd shared nearly a decade of her life with. I tried to reassure myself, reminding myself that she had started a new job, that it was probably stressful and taking up her time. But as the days went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Recently, Kate always seemed to have an excuse ready. She would tell me how busy she was, and she started cutting our dates short or canceling altogether at the last minute, something she'd never done before. We used to spend entire weekends together, enjoying the simplest things, finding a new coffee shop, wandering through Golden Gate Park, or spending lazy afternoons curled up on the couch watching movies. Those weekends used to feel endless, full of little moments that connected us. But now, every time I suggested we do something, she would hesitate, and I could sense her pulling away. She started saying she needed space to focus on herself, and while I wanted to be supportive, the words stung, leaving a hollow feeling I couldn't ignore. The quiet, everyday rituals that had once bonded us, cooking together, spending hours talking about our dreams and plans, seemed to vanish without explanation. I'd look across the table at her during the rare dinners we did share, and it felt as if there was a stranger sitting across from me. Her mind seemed far away, as if she were somewhere else entirely, and when I tried to reach her, my words barely seemed to land. Our conversations had become surface level, devoid of the warmth and laughter that used to fill our evenings. Even our physical closeness felt different. There was a time when simply holding her hand or having her rest her head on my shoulder made me feel completely at peace. Now, though, there was an almost tangible distance between us, as though an invisible wall had been built, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't break through it. I kept telling myself that it was temporary, that she just needed time to adjust, but the changes continued. Each day, the woman I thought I knew seemed to slip further and further away from me, leaving only a shadow of the connection we once shared. I began questioning myself, wondering if I had done something wrong, if there was something I was missing. I replayed our recent conversations in my mind, searching for clues, trying to find any reason for her change in behavior. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, to assure myself it was all in my head, the sense of dread kept growing, heavy and unrelenting. For the first time in our relationship, I felt helpless, like I was watching us unravel before my eyes and was powerless to stop it. I started to sense an invisible barrier forming between us. One evening, I even asked her directly if there was something she wasn't telling me. Kate looked at me with a strange expression, then said she felt pressured and needed some time alone to adjust to everything. "Things are fine, Dan," she said. "I just need time to get used to work." Her words sounded reasonable, but there was something in her eyes that betrayed a different truth. I felt as if a wall was being built between us, one that I didn't know how to break down. After many sleepless nights, I decided I had to find out for myself. Part of me felt terrible for doing this, like I was betraying her trust. But my anxiety and doubt had grown too strong to ignore. One night, under a heavy downpour, I drove to her office after work. I didn't call or text her, just sat quietly in my car, watching from a distance. Rain poured down in sheets, obscuring the view through my windshield, but I waited, feeling my heart pounding as I tried to convince myself I was just overthinking. After about half an hour, I saw Kate leaving the building, but she wasn't alone. She was walking with a man, someone older than us, and after a moment, I realized he was the company driver she had briefly mentioned once or twice before. They stood under the building's awning, sheltering from the rain as the yellow streetlight cast a warm glow over them. From my car, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Kate smiling, a real, open smile that I hadn't seen from her in a long time. For a moment, I felt as though I was watching a stranger. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at them, watching every move. The man said something, and Kate laughed, a laugh that seemed so familiar, so natural. It wasn't a polite laugh, but a genuine one, something she'd always shared with me. And in that moment, I felt like I'd been left behind, and an overwhelming sense of fear took hold of me. The rain continued to fall heavily, and I sat there in the car, completely helpless, unsure of what to do next. Memories of the 9 years we'd spent together flashed before my eyes, the bike rides in Portland, the long nights planning our future. I wanted to believe this was all just a misunderstanding, but their easy closeness suggested something else. Had I, after all these years together, slowly lost Kate without even realizing it? Our 9th anniversary finally arrived, and I was hopeful it would be an opportunity for us to reconnect. I'd prepared everything carefully, a bouquet of deep red roses and a long, heartfelt letter I'd stayed up writing the night before. In it, I poured out everything, from my love for her, the memories we'd shared, to my hopes for our future. Despite the distance that had grown between us recently, I wanted to believe that this was just a rough patch, and that we could overcome it together. That evening, I went over to Kate's place, feeling optimistic, almost like it was the start of something new for us. When I got there, everything was quiet. Kate had fallen asleep on the couch in the living room, her breathing soft and even, her face peaceful, though somehow distant. I stood there, watching her for a few minutes, trying to find that familiar feeling, the warmth I used to feel just being near her. Her phone was on the table next to her, the screen still faintly glowing, and a series of text notifications flashed by. An invisible force seemed to draw me in, urging me to look. Normally, I would never touch her phone, there had always been mutual respect for each other's privacy. But at that moment, the doubts and unease overwhelmed everything else. My hands trembled as I picked up her phone, taking a deep breath before unlocking it. The first thing I saw was a thread of messages from the driver I'd seen her with the other night. My heart pounded as I scrolled through them, a sense of dread building with every word. Their conversation was close, disturbingly intimate, filled with pet names and affectionate phrases that felt painfully familiar yet impossibly distant. Love, a word that Kate had once reserved only for me, now used so casually between them, as though I had never been part of her life. They spoke of secret lunch dates, of rendezvous carefully hidden from me, and of plans to meet again soon. In a few short moments, every suspicion I'd harbored, every fear I'd been fighting to push down, was confirmed right there on the screen. I felt a hollow ache expanding in my chest, as if each word had shattered something fundamental within me. Then, I read the message that truly broke me. She had written to him, "I never thought I could feel this way about anyone else." Those words hit me like a knife to the heart, twisting painfully as I struggled to comprehend them. In all our 9 years together, through every high and low, she had never said anything like that to me. She had never expressed that kind of wonder, that depth of feeling. My hands trembled, the phone screen blurring as tears welled up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could the person I had trusted so completely have given someone else what I thought was uniquely ours? And then, as if to drive the point further, there were photos. Pictures of them together in a cozy cafe, sitting close, her hand lightly brushing as she looked at him with an intimacy I hadn't seen in months. In those photos, she looked completely at ease, glowing with a happiness that felt cruelly foreign to me. Her smile, that radiant, genuine smile she'd once reserved for our moments together, was now directed at him. Each image, each captured glance between them felt like a blow, tearing me apart. It was as if I were watching a version of her I no longer recognized, a stranger who had taken the place of the woman I loved. I felt myself unraveling, every image and word deepening the wound. This was the person I thought I knew better than anyone, someone I had envisioned a future with, and yet here she was, sharing pieces of herself with someone else, pieces that were once mine. The memories of our shared moments suddenly felt tainted, as though they were slipping away, replaced by the cold, hard reality that she had willingly chosen to betray me. Sitting there, holding her phone, I felt my world shatter. The Kate I had known, the love we had built, felt like it was dissolving, leaving me alone, devastated, and completely lost. Those images, those messages, they shattered me. All our memories, from our teenage dates back in Portland, our camping trips at Yosemite, to the late nights where we'd sat side by side dreaming of a future together, it all seemed like a cruel joke at that moment. I felt betrayed, hollow, and lost. I sat there on her couch, too stunned to cry or get angry, just consumed by a profound emptiness, as if everything I'd ever believed in and held sacred had been destroyed in an instant. At that moment, I knew that things would never be the same. There was nothing left to say or explain. Quietly, I placed the bouquet and the letter I'd written on the table, both of which now felt meaningless. I looked at Kate one last time, still asleep, completely unaware that my world had just collapsed. Feeling numb and empty, I walked out of her house, leaving everything behind with a broken heart and a pain I never thought I'd have to endure. The next day, I knew I had to confront Kate. After last night, I hadn't slept at all. My mind was swirling with questions and the unshakable images of what I'd seen on her phone. The messages, the photos, the way she looked at him, laughing and smiling, these memories clung to me like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't know exactly what I was hoping for, a confession, an apology, or maybe some miracle that would prove it was all just a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew I needed answers from her, even if it meant breaking my heart all over again. When Kate opened the door, she seemed a bit startled, perhaps not expecting me to show up unannounced. I walked into her living room, and we sat down across from each other. The room, once warm and familiar, now felt stifling and distant, the weight of unspoken words filling the air between us. After a few tense moments of silence, I broke the ice. My voice was quiet but firm, trying to steady the storm of emotions boiling within me. "Kate, is there something you need to tell me?" I asked, looking directly into her eyes, hoping for a flicker of honesty. Kate looked down, avoiding my gaze, and I noticed her hands tightening in her lap as if trying to hold herself together. After a pause, she finally answered, "Lately, I've been feeling stressed, with work, and the pressure of everything." Her voice was shaky, but there was nothing in her words that sounded like real remorse. I felt anger simmering beneath my skin, and I couldn't hold back any longer. "I know, Kate," I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. "I know about him. I saw the messages. I know about your meetups, the plans you made with him behind my back." Her face turned pale, her eyes widening as if caught off guard. For a brief moment, the shock in her expression morphed into a kind of fear she couldn't hide. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice barely audible as tears began to well up in her eyes. He made me feel understood, listened to." Her words were broken and shaky, but each one landed like a punch to my chest. 9 years together, and we had shared everything, or at least, I thought we had. And now, she was telling me that this man was the one who made her feel like herself. "What about me, Kate?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, roughened by the pain. "What about everything we've been through, every promise we made, every memory we shared? Was that not enough for you?" Kate sat there in silence, her head down, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Dan. I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you. I still love you, it was just. I got lost," she was apologizing, but the words felt hollow, as if they carried no weight. Her excuses only deepened the wound, each one like salt rubbing into the rawness of my heart. At that moment, I realized that there was nothing left to salvage. Everything we had built together, every shared memory, now felt like a distant, hollow echo of something that was no longer real. I had come here hoping, perhaps foolishly, for a sign of true remorse, a genuine apology that might make this pain a little easier to bear. But all I was getting were weak excuses and empty apologies, words that carried no weight, no conviction. She had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. With a sense of finality settling heavily on my shoulders, I stood up, looking at her one last time. As I met her eyes, I felt an emptiness unlike anything I'd ever known, a hollow ache, as if a vital part of me had shattered beyond repair. "I don't think you can understand what you've done to me, Kate," I said, my voice cold and steady, drained of all anger, leaving only a weary sadness. There was nothing left to say, and nothing left to feel but this consuming sense of loss. I turned and walked out of that house without another word, without looking back. I heard her call my name once, softly, almost as if she didn't believe it herself, but I kept walking. She didn't come after me. The silence between us, in that final moment, was louder than anything she could have said. As I stepped outside, the world felt both too vast and too small, pressing down on me with a weight I could hardly bear. It was as if the very foundation of my life was crumbling beneath my feet, each step taking me further away from the person I thought I knew and the life I thought we were building together. As I walked away, memories flooded my mind, flashes of laughter, shared dreams, whispered promises in the dark. All of it now felt meaningless, reduced to ashes. Our past, once so vivid, felt like it had been erased in an instant, leaving behind nothing but hollow spaces and broken fragments. I felt like I was drifting through a fog, carrying with me the weight of betrayal and heartbreak I never thought I'd have to bear. Each step felt heavier than the last, my heart sinking deeper with the reality that there was no going back. This was the end of something I had poured so much of myself into, something I believed would last a lifetime. And now, I was left only with the raw, aching truth that sometimes, love isn't enough, and sometimes, the person you love most becomes a stranger you can no longer recognize. After everything was exposed, I never anticipated the fallout to be so complex and devastating. Kate's family, the people I had come to see as my own, found out about her betrayal, and the reaction was swift and harsh. Kate's mother, a strong, disciplined woman who held a high position in the legal field, was utterly furious. She saw Kate's actions as shameful, a disgrace to the family, something she couldn't overlook. She demanded that Kate's company investigate the relationship between her and the driver and even threatened to go public if necessary. For her, this wasn't just a personal issue but a matter of family honor, something that reflected poorly on everyone involved. The tension escalated to the point where Kate's mother actually went to her office, demanding answers from HR, insisting that they address the situation. Kate went from being just another employee to the center of gossip and judgment among her coworkers. To them, she wasn't just someone who had cheated, she was now seen as a person who had acted dishonorably in all aspects. Kate's life was falling apart, not only romantically but professionally and socially as well. Heartbreakingly, Kate placed all the blame on me. She insisted that if I hadn't looked at her messages, if I hadn't told her family, none of this would have happened. She accused me of ruining her life, of costing her the love of her family, her job, and her reputation. Hearing those words cut even deeper because all I had wanted was to save what we had, to hold on to the love I had given everything to build. But the betrayal didn't end with Kate. Several mutual friends, the ones I had trusted most, had known about her affair but chose to keep it from me. I remember times when we had all gone out together, and they'd seen Kate with him, acting in ways that went beyond friendship. But not one of them had warned me or even hinted at the truth. Some of them even sided with Kate, brushing off her actions as a mistake, saying things like everyone makes mistakes and advising me to just forgive and move on, as if what I'd endured was trivial. I felt betrayed not only by the woman I loved but by the very people I thought would stand by me. It was a double loss, the collapse of my relationship and the shattering of trust in those closest to me. Each day, I felt more and more isolated. Every beautiful memory, every moment I'd shared with Kate's family, now felt like a cruel joke. Family dinners, the warm concern from her mother, all of that was gone, replaced by cold stares and silent judgment. At night, I lay alone in the dark, trying to make sense of it all. I kept asking myself if I'd been blind, if I'd been too naive in trusting Kate and the people around us. Why had no one told me? Why did no one stand by me when I needed them most? Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Kate's joyful expression as she looked at the other man. The image haunted me, tearing my heart open a little more each day. To me, it felt like I was trapped in a nightmare with no escape. I'd once believed I had everything, a stable, long-lasting love, a warm second family, and loyal friends. But now, all of it had vanished, leaving me alone to face a pain I had no one to share with. I hadn't just lost the woman I loved with all my heart, I had lost the world I had built around her, a world I thought was secure and unbreakable. Now, it was all just fragments, distant shadows of relationships that once meant everything to me. After everything fell apart, I felt like I was falling into an endless void, a state of emptiness and hopelessness that I couldn't escape. I barely recognized myself anymore. Each day I woke up questioning the point of living a life where everything I once cherished was gone. My home, once a place of comfort, had turned cold, filled with painful memories and reminders of a past that was now shattered. Every corner, every small item seemed to bring back memories of Kate, the nights we'd spent together, her laughter, the way she'd once looked at me. Now, all those memories had transformed into sharp, piercing fragments of a life I'd lost. During the day, I tried to focus on work, hoping it would distract me, but the loneliness followed me, even in the busy hum of the office and the noise of the city around me. I drifted through my days like a shadow, unable to feel anything, as if my life had become a silent movie where I was only a passive spectator. The nights, however, were the worst. I'd sit alone in the dark, letting the pain and loss wash over me, reliving memories that only reminded me of everything I would never have again. Some nights, I'd wake up from nightmares about Kate. I'd see her, smiling and walking alongside another man, as if she'd already forgotten everything we had. I'd lie there, gasping for breath, as if something were suffocating me. The pain and betrayal felt like an unquenchable fire, burning inside me, trapping me in an endless cycle of anguish and despair. After countless sleepless nights, I realized that if I didn't do something, I would lose myself completely. In a moment of sheer desperation, I decided to seek help from a therapist. It was something I had never considered before, and the idea of opening up to a stranger made me feel uneasy and vulnerable. The first few sessions were almost unbearable. I'd sit across from the therapist, struggling to find words to describe the pain that consumed me. It felt as if the pain was so overwhelming that it had become indescribable. Several times, I wanted to just get up and leave, doubting whether this could ever actually help. But the therapist remained patient, listening without pressing me. She assured me that there was no rush, that I could speak when I was ready. Gradually, I began to open up, bit by bit. I talked about Kate, about our 9 years together, the betrayal, and the immense pain I felt at losing everything we had built. Each word felt like a release, as if I were finally letting go of the weight that had been suffocating me. Though the pain was still raw, sharing it lifted a small part of the burden from my chest. With each session, I started to learn how to accept that some things are beyond my control, that certain pains require time, patience, and gentleness to heal. There was no quick fix, no words or actions that could instantly erase the hurt, but my therapist helped me recognize that this was okay. She guided me to understand that, while I couldn't change the past, I could change how I responded to it. Gradually, she encouraged me to let go of the need for closure from anyone but myself. She showed me that clinging to resentment and self-blame would only deepen my suffering, trapping me in a cycle of anger and guilt. I began to understand that forgiveness wasn't for Kate, but for me, so that I could start living freely, unburdened by the weight of what had been done to me. She taught me the importance of self-worth, of seeing myself as deserving of love and respect, independent of anyone else's treatment or validation. She helped me see that even though this loss was devastating, it also offered me a powerful lesson in resilience and growth, an opportunity to become stronger. We talked about boundaries, about valuing myself enough to stand firm on what I deserved, and how to carry this awareness forward. Slowly, I began to trust her words. The bitterness that had once consumed me began to fade as I realized that I was more than this heartbreak, more than the scars left behind. Though the wound remained, a part of my story I would always carry, I could feel a sense of peace slowly returning to me. Instead of trying to erase the past, I was learning to live with it, to integrate it as a part of who I was without letting it control my present. Each therapy session became a small but significant step toward rediscovering pieces of myself I thought I had lost, the strength I once had, the happiness I had felt before this chapter of my life. My therapist encouraged me to focus not only on the pain but on the future that lay ahead, on what I could still achieve, create, and experience in my life. Through this journey, I began to realize that I was not merely surviving this betrayal, but that I was finding the strength to rebuild myself, piece by piece. I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about integrating what had happened and finding a way to move forward with compassion for myself. In those quiet moments of self-reflection, I began to feel a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time, a renewed respect and even love for myself. This journey was far from over, but for the first time, I felt that I was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by the person I was becoming through it all. After months of being submerged in darkness and isolation, I started to feel a faint glimmer of light returning to my life. Though the healing process was slow and filled with challenges, bit by bit, I began to regain my balance. Each morning, I no longer woke up feeling the same crushing weight of emptiness. Therapy had helped me see that, even without Kate, I could still live a meaningful life. I was learning to let go of the past, to allow the memories to settle as a part of my story rather than a lingering source of pain. I began exploring things I'd never done before. Instead of sitting alone with my thoughts on weekends, I pushed myself to try new activities. I signed up for an art class, where each brushstroke, every splash of color, felt like a way to release the emotions bottled up inside. At first, I felt awkward, out of place among strangers, but the more I immersed myself in painting, the more I felt a sense of calm washing over me. One day, while taking a walk around the park near my home, I noticed a woman sitting alone on a bench by the lake. She looked weary and deep in thought, almost like a reflection of myself months before. We began talking, and her name was Emily. She had also recently gone through the end of a difficult marriage and was struggling to find her footing again. As we share our stories, we both felt an unexpected sense of kinship, a connection born from shared pain. From that day, Emily and I became quiet companions for each other, providing comfort and understanding without any expectations. Through my conversations with Emily, I started to understand that life wasn't only about what had been lost, but also about what still lay ahead. She inspired me to move forward, not for anyone else's sake, but my own. Sometimes, we'd simply sit in silence, listening to the wind, the birds, and the rustling of the trees. These moments taught me that there was still simple joy to be found in life, even if I'd overlooked it before. Alongside these moments, I began focusing on self-care. I created routines for myself, healthy meals, regular exercise, reading time, and even joining a local book club. Reading became an escape and a source of wisdom. Each story I encountered offered a new perspective, making me feel like I was living multiple lives. Slowly, I was reconnecting with myself and finding fulfillment in the everyday moments. As time passed, I could feel myself becoming stronger. Each morning brought a renewed sense of peace. I had new goals, new plans, and for the first time in a long time, I felt excited about the future. I once thought this heartache would scar me forever, but now I see it as a chapter in my life that has made me wiser and more resilient. Reflecting on it all, I realized that while my past would always remain a part of me, it no longer defined me. I learned to value the experiences and lessons life had brought, even the painful ones. Though there were moments of despair, I came out of it with a deeper understanding of what it means to love oneself and to grow from hardship. I now understand that real love isn't about holding on to someone at all costs. It's about nurturing self-compassion, embracing acceptance, and rediscovering oneself in the face of adversity. Now, I look toward the future with confidence and hope. Life is still out there, filled with opportunities to explore and experience. I'm ready to continue my journey, not weighed down by sorrow and regret, but with gratitude and a sense of purpose. I've found myself again, and I'm ready to embrace whatever lies ahead. Now, standing on my own, I felt an independence and sense of control over my life that I hadn't known before. The idea of exploring new places, learning new skills, and pursuing personal dreams was invigorating, filling me with purpose each day. One of my biggest dreams was to embark on a long journey to places I had always wanted to see but had never made time for. I set myself the goal of traveling solo, to experience new cities, cultures, and take on adventures I hadn't dared to before. It could be journeys to majestic mountains, remote lands, or serene places where I could reflect on life. This was not just about seeing new sights, it was a journey to reconnect with myself. I also began volunteering within my community. Helping others didn't just bring them happiness, it brought me a sense of fulfillment and purpose. I joined a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting children in need, spending my weekends teaching and playing with them. The innocent smiles of those kids reminded me of the simple, beautiful things in life that I had once overlooked. Contributing to the community became a way to heal, a way to restore my faith in kindness and human connection. In quiet moments, I still thought about Kate, but the emotions had shifted. Where there had once been only pain and regret, now there was peace. I realized that even though we were no longer together, what we had shared helped shape who I am today. I no longer harbored resentment or blame, instead, I felt grateful. Grateful for having experienced a true connection, and grateful for the growth that the heartbreak had brought me. I understood that those years had taught me valuable lessons, and they had helped me become stronger. Embracing the past helped me see my own self-worth more clearly. I learned to love myself, respect my boundaries, and set limits to avoid being hurt again. I knew that if I were to meet someone new in the future, I wouldn't lose myself like I had before. Real love, I understood now, begins with self-respect and self-love. Looking toward the future, I no longer felt fear or uncertainty. I saw the challenges I had faced as simply parts of a larger journey. They taught me that happiness doesn't come from relying on others, but from the values we create within ourselves and the contributions we make to the world. Each day, I strive to live fully, with gratitude and optimism for the good things yet to come. Now, I am ready for a new chapter in life. A chapter no longer bound by the past, but filled with hope and purpose. I feel confident in myself and in what I am capable of achieving. I know that the journey ahead is still long, but I am prepared to walk it with a strong heart and a peaceful mind, ready to embrace new opportunities and welcome new companions along the way.